10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody. I hope everyone is well. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. Hope you're enjoying yourselves and happy to be here with me. I'm happy to be here with you. I appreciate and thank each and every one of you for being here with me. You guys are what make it all worthwhile. And I always mean that. It's absolutely true. It's the only reason why I do this week after week for 12 years now. It's because you guys matter. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I've been seeing, and I put a poll out. You should see it on Facebook. I've just been seeing a lot of people talking about kids at 16 being able to vote, and I've been meaning to talk about this for a little while, but I just haven't had a chance to get to it. So I wanted to do that. So I don't know how many people will be joining us on this. It doesn't really matter. I just want to have this conversation, and please, I'm looking at the comments. Chime in. It's a conversation for all of us because it affects everyone. Now, one of the big things that I've been finding about this, and I wanted to get some details, so because you hear the generic comments from various politicians, and you just never know. Oh, by the way, Heather, yes, you're right. It does look really good. Thank you for that. Heather, by the way, Heather Micha made the background there, folks, and so she helped me really class it up, and I got to thank her for that. But I was saying, so we're talking about, and we've been hearing a lot of politicians talking about this idea that they want to go out there and lower the voting age, okay? But what are the facts about this? Because no one ever talks about any of the facts that go with this. And I think it's really important that we actually know what we're talking about, what we would be getting ourselves into if we actually do this. So I put together some data on this. Now, let me start off, first of all, you can check this all yourself, so I want you to see the data yourself. But I went over to the census, took a look at this, and how many people are we actually talking about? Well, this is where you would go to on the census in the population by sex and by selected age groups. And real simple, the answer is it's 9 million. So what they're talking about, if they lower the age to be able to vote to 16, you're talking about an extra 9 million people who would be able to vote, okay? So it's not this huge, enormous group. It's not something that would absolutely devastate and change everything for voting. Something else that's important to know about that is that, and I want to get this up, something else to know about that is if you looked at the age of your average voter, or actually looked at how people vote, now, a lot of people want to talk about there's more millennials that are voting now than ever before, and that's true. But the big thing that's really important is that the number of millennials that are voting is less than 50%. It's always less than 50%, okay? So half of the 9 million, at best, are going to be able to vote, or will not actually be able to vote, but actually would be going out and voting. So that's important. Let's also look at a couple of other things real quick, just so that we know what we're all talking about here when we say this. How many of these kids are actually have any kind of life experience? And that's where it comes important. Now, if you're wondering where am I getting this from, this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the United States government. So it's not partisan. This is not any party. This is the government's numbers themselves. And what they're saying is that for both sexes, kids who are 16 to 19 years old, okay? What do we see? That there are only about 795,000 of them that are available to even go and vote, that even go out and work. And of those, only 582,000 kids actually go out and have a job between the ages of 16 and 19, okay? So that's kind of important here. Okay, so you're talking about half that number, about 291,000 if you do all the math, and I did the math. So we're talking about 291,000 kids out of roughly 4 million have any kind of experience in the world. Oh, that's it. Okay? And that's the number of kids who are going to be involved in everything. That they're going to be doing everything to affect your life. And that kind of scares me because they have no life experience. They don't know anything. And this isn't something negative against kids who are 16 or 17. I'm not putting them down. But I want to really understand this and look at what's being said when we're hearing all this hype across the internet, across social media from various politicians that are saying, hey, we want 16-year-olds to get involved. They should be the ones voting. Well, let's think about this. They have no life experience. They haven't done anything. I mean, literally, they haven't done anything. Okay? Most of these kids, you're talking about 1/8 the number of kids, actually 1/9 the number of kids have even had a job, any kind of job. We're talking about shoveling snow, going out and doing newspapers, anything. They've never gotten a paycheck. They have no idea what it is to pay taxes. They have no idea what it is to work 9 to 5. They have no idea what the impact of what they're doing is going to have an effect. I think that's really critical. When politicians are trying to sell this idea to us, oh yeah, everyone needs to vote, everyone needs to be involved. Well, no. Everyone who's an adult, everyone who's responsible for themselves, sure, I agree with that. But why would you want a 16-year-old? I mean, and let's think of something else that's really important here. 16-year-olds haven't even finished high school. They don't have basic education. That's an absolute fact. They haven't completed high school, which means they don't have a firm grip on the basics. And you can talk about how the education system's gone one way or another. I mean, look at everybody who's talked about Common Core. And what's Common Core? The consensus is that it's rote memorization. It's not learning. It's not intelligence. It's just spitting back information that they're being given. So they'll answer anything the way that you tell them to answer it. So I got to ask a question here. If we're going to have a 16-year-old who doesn't have a full education, who doesn't have an understanding of what it is to work, who doesn't have an understanding of the consequences of their actions, and we're going to give them the right to vote, and half of them, if the statistics stay consistent, half of them will actually do that. Can you imagine what's going to happen? And think about this. They're going to wind up relying on either their teachers, whatever the teachers have told them to do, or their parents, if we hope, or what their friends say. Or nowadays, you're talking about mass media. Whatever the latest meme is, that's what they're going to go with. That's got to be terrifying. Imagine that your pay, your ability to get a job, to open a business, to whether or not illegal aliens get into the nation, your right to have a firearm, your right to own a car, your right to anything is based on somebody who has absolutely no idea, and they're making their decision because they saw a meme, a picture on Facebook or on Twitter or on Snapchat that they liked. That someone gave them a really good commercial in between their video games, and that's what they're basing their decision on. That's going to affect everyone's life in this nation. I don't know. That terrifies me. That I am truly terrified by. Maybe, I don't know. There's parents out there. You tell me. You tell me what you think about that. Do you think your kids are mature enough and capable enough to make a vote? And I have to tell you, this is a question that's coming from the very same people who are telling us the kids aren't old enough or mature enough.
Yeah, it's a bit surprising, isn't it, that a state like...
Who aren't old enough or mature enough to be able to own a firearm. I mean, in California, they passed the bill that they had to raise the age of kids owning guns, okay? That's got to tell you something right there. They raised the limit. The kids who are 18 aren't mature enough to own a firearm. You got to wonder about this. If they're not old enough to own a firearm and be responsible for that, They're not old enough to have a driver's license on their own. They have a provisional driver's license. They don't have a basic education. Why are we saying that these kids should be able to go out and have the right to vote? I mean, to tell me that, well, it's just fair. You got to be kidding me. Besides the fact that life isn't fair, it's not even smart. If that's what we believe, if we believe the kids can't be responsible enough to have a firearm, they're not responsible enough to drink, they're not responsible enough to drive on their own without restrictions, most of them don't work, how can we say that they're responsible enough to be able to vote? I don't understand it. And something that really caught my attention about this, I was looking through and I was doing some of the research on this, and there was something that caught my attention, and I want to show that to you. This is from Politico, just so you can see and find it for yourself. This is Dems push bill raising minimum age to buy assault-style weapons. Again, that's on January 23rd of this year, January 2019. And the last thing that was said in this article, and it's by a Republican, it's said by a Republican here, so it's not partisan. I want to make this point here very clear. So Republican Representative Fitzpatrick says that by raising the age of, by raising the age restrictions for military-style semi-automatic weapons, this bipartisan bill provides parity with handgun purchases. Okay, there it is. While continuing to support Second Amendment comments. Okay, there it is. While continuing to support Second Amendment rights, this Congress can take meaningful action to protect our children and keep our communities safe. Now, that's really big. I think that's huge. What he's saying right there is real easy. He's saying that kids, they're not responsible. 16-year-olds. He's saying that about 18-year-olds. 18-year-olds aren't responsible. Why in the world, if we think a kid at 18, 19, 20 isn't responsible enough to have a firearm, why would we give them the right to vote, which will affect tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions of people for decades? That is huge. That is important. That's massively important. And I think that's more dangerous than owning a firearm. You put one good or one bad politician in as president or into Congress or any part of our government, even at the local level. At the local level, you can imagine, think about what your taxes or your property taxes are going to be like. Imagine what it's going to be like for someone who doesn't pay property taxes and has no idea what that is. Someone who's willing to fund anything because some politician said, hey, why not? They have a good slogan. They have a good picture. Maybe they play video games too. I mean, what's the criteria? I don't know. And maybe there's a 16-year-old or 17-year-old that's watching this right now, and you can tell me, because I'm listening on Facebook, tell me, you think that I'm being unfair? Is there a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old out there who wants to try and tell me what they understand about Iran and the nuclear deal? Maybe there's a kid out there who's 16, 17-year-old that wants to tell me about taxation, the fair tax, or what a progressive tax is, or what should be the top tax bracket, and how is that going to affect businesses? I mean, these aren't, I'm not trying to be unfair. I'm trying to be honest with ourselves to be able to understand this clearly. And maybe parents, Ann Field, I see you joined in. Heather, you're there. There are others who are watching this. Tell me, guys, do you think 16 or 17-year-olds are old enough to do that? And when we give them this opportunity, this privilege to be able to vote, we have to understand we're putting our lives in their hands. We are putting our lives in the hands of 16-year-olds. Now, there's another aspect to this that I want to get to. Why is it exactly the 16 to 17-year-olds? Why would some Democrats and some politicians, especially mostly progressive Democrats, why are they saying this? Wouldn't you know, it's really interesting. If it is, according to the math, about 4 million kids would be added to the voting pool, if all the statistics are correct. That happens to match the exact number of people, almost exactly the number of people who started voting Libertarian. And the Libertarian Party has been growing, and the Democratic and Republican parties are shrinking. And it seems kind of funny to me that the exact same percentage, 1.5% of all the voters, based on 2016 numbers, is exactly the same group of people that they're appealing to. The same group of people who don't have a full education, who are being pumped full of thoughts, told under Common Core to regurgitate the same information that their teachers give them. Okay? And we want that group to go out. The same group that quote and parrot everything that their teachers say to them. They're the ones they want to have go out and vote, which kind of offsets the Libertarian Party, where people who are dissatisfied with Republicans, dissatisfied with conservatives or with Democrats or the socialists, they're all going to the Libertarians. Gee, isn't that interesting? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I think it's kind of interesting. It really caught my attention. And I don't know, maybe it takes more time to think about it. I mean, we're seeing people all over the place going on Facebook. They're having these conversations. I figured, let's have this conversation then. Let's have some of the numbers. Now you got some of the numbers, you got some of the facts. I think it's a horrible idea. In fact, I believe that either we have 18, you're a full adult and you can do everything. That means join the military, drink, get married, everything. Or it's 21 and you can do everything. But it shouldn't be one or the other, kind of good for this or that. If you're old enough to live and die for our nation, then you're old enough for everything else. And by the way, if you're saying 16 is good enough to be able to go out and vote, please explain to me, why isn't 16 good enough to be able to go to the draft and go fight for our nation? If you understand our nation enough, that you believe it in enough to be able to vote, then you should have the option to be able to go and fight and defend those beliefs. And if you got to explain to me why not. And by the way, would we say that someone at 16 should be able to have sex with adults? Would we say that someone at 16 is old enough to be able to get married? If we're saying they're responsible enough to vote, then aren't they responsible enough for everything else? And if they're not, then why are we having this conversation? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But I wanted to get that out there. I thank everybody for listening in. I'm looking forward to seeing your comments. Please vote in the poll. Tell me what you think there. And get in touch with me either on Twitter, Facebook, email me. Just let me know. I want to hear what you think. And I thank you for your time tonight. I hope everyone has a good night. And let's see where we go with this. Thanks.